Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paragliding Banter. Thank you, everyone, for all the support that has been shown to us in the last few episodes, and I really appreciate the feedback and the constructive feedback too. And we'll all the constructive feedback and the good feedback will be taken, and we'll try and see if we can make it better. Today is again a very special episode. I have my friend Vistas Kharas with me. This is the first episode where I've actually named the guest before I could say anything about him because he's this name is synonymous with XC and long distance flying. So most of you will know who I'm talking about, but he's also known as the Vulture. And but I like to call him Viz, like everyone else does. We started flying together, uh, and I've seen his progression over the years, and he's gone to achieve many accolades. He's done some impressive flying, and he has this perceptive skill in him to hunt for the thermals in the right places. And as an XC pilot, it's easily seen from his long flights, be it in Beer or in Maharashtra, that his skill level is to a different level altogether. He's also the organizer of many XC comps in India. It's a learning experience when you see him in the sky. He's a very caring person on ground and in the air. He'll always look out for others and just not concentrate only on his flying. He'll always be there to help others. That's my friend Vistas Kharas or Viz. Viz, welcome to Paragliding Banter.
Hey Sajid, thank you very much. That was quite an introduction. Hopefully we will have a constructive talk.
Yeah, what I haven't told the people is what a pain also you can be. Pain because of your habits, which are
Hmm.
something that we're going to talk about. Your
Anal, you mean?
Yes, with paragliding, how you like to prepare, how you like to think, how you like to plan, the amount of questions you will
Yeah.
ask, and how you will screw up everybody's planning, whoever plans anything, because that's not what you want to do, but that works. All right. Okay, listen. Uh, we want to learn from you today, and
Okay.
our listeners are looking forward to learning about XC and thermaling. So, first of all, to give a background, you've done 150 kilometers in Beer. Is that right? Or longer?
Um, I think it's 230 kilometers.
230 kilometers, my mistake there. And then you also did Panchgani to Pavna twice.
Kilometers.
Sorry, how many kilometers was that?
That's about 100, I said.
Okay, 100. Okay, we lost you in between there. Right. So, apart from these long distance flights and everything else
Yeah.
that you do, uh, you've also been the person who has guided me personally in Beer and helped me understand the topography and understand the thermals. So, can you tell our listeners what is it that really changed for you in XC flying? What really clicked and you said, ah, this is the way to do it? Was there something or is just a very perceptive thing for you?
Um, Sorry, I didn't get the question. So,
So the question was that
yeah.
you've progressed so well in your XC flying.
Right.
When you started
Right.
flying, we both started
Right.
together. In fact, not both of us, all of us, you, me, Rohit,
Right.
Karthik, Sanjeev, lots of other people started together.
Right.
And now we everyone has gone to their different skill levels, right? I do a
Right.
little bit of XC, a little bit of acro, you do complete XC,
Right.
and so on. So when we were all struggling when we were just out of
Right.
school and we were flying together, and if you remember, we used to get an
Right.
instructor to fly with us, just to keep an eye on us. And you were the first one who actually left the ridge, and we
Right.
realized, oh, we can leave the ridge and go fly there and come back. So, what is it that changed for you? What did you feel? How did you learn about thermaling? And because we really didn't have a very
So,
official
yeah, yeah.
course as such at that time.
Yeah, so I mean, for many years, I would say after, we started flying after school,
Right.
I was quite happy to, just do the ridge soaring and, basically weekend warriors.
Hmm.
And while I was doing this, I don't know whether it was just the lack of information or lack of interest or what, but there was this idea. I mean, I heard that you could climb to cloud base, and this was absolutely fascinating. It kind of used to keep eating away at me, that why am I stuck to this ridge when I can fly up to that cloud which I can see.
So this is approximately about 10 to 11 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah, I would
Right.
say about, yeah, closer to 9 years, I think.
Okay.
One year sort of after
The school.
I
Yeah.
learned flying and
Right.
everything. So anyway, and then also I kind of found out about the concept of thermaling. Before that we were just ridge soaring, and I think one day I saw, I think it was Vijay Soni. At that time I couldn't really differentiate between gliders and pilots and things like that. But I saw that there was this one pilot. I kind of followed him, and I saw him climbing and climbing, and he just disappeared out of sight. And that's when I realized that there is more beyond just soaring, which we used to do all the time. So it started from there. It started from trying to get these thermals, and studying the topography, where you might find them. I started connecting that every time I went, it was in a particular region that I would get this lift. So then I started figuring out why it was like that, and of course then reading books, and trying to connect theory and practice. And
Okay.
then once yeah,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
yeah, and I remember once I was so then it was just that at that point it was not XC flying, it was just climbing. That can I climb and touch the cloud. I always wanted, I was dying to find out what flying to the cloud was. What does a cloud feel like? What does it look like? So one of these days, and as you know, Kamshet, we have a lot of blue days, so you don't really see sky clouds there. But anyway, so once I was really high, and I still remember one of our instructors, TJ, and he got on the radio and just said, Babaji, you are so high, you can just travel. And that was the first time I just left the home ridge and just let the wind take me. I just flew downwind. I don't think I connected any more thermals on the way or anything, but it was like almost 14, 15 kilometers. And that was amazing, and that kind of then got me hooked to the idea of cross country flight.
Right. I remember that time when you went to towards Shelar side and you landed at the ashram, and we were all amazed. I said, "Oh my God, how did you do that? I mean, what's going on?" Although we were all one group, and
Right,
it was just amazing to see that, okay, this is possible too.
right,
So we have come a long way from finding these things out. So you learned by yourself. You figured out,
right,
if I go there, I get the thermal again.
right,
That day it was back there. So why is it working that way? So these questions that you had in your
right.
mind are now easily available in terms of knowledge, either from books,
True,
from videos. Lot has happened in these 10 to 11 years in terms of better designs, better information available, technology, and
true.
the pilots nowadays, be it old or the younger pilots who are coming in, have
Right,
access to this, and their rate of learning is far
right.
more faster and greater.
True.
So so what's really interesting for me in what you said now is that you figured out by yourself why that particular patch of land, now we call it our home thermal, is really
Correct.
working, and
Right.
why, what time of the day it works, and you figured that out, and then you started connecting thermals. Uh, it'll be interesting to point out to the listeners over here that we went to Beer around the same time,
Right.
and we went for a course, a thermaling course, and beer was a completely different, uh, completely different beast, completely different to what we were used to in Kamshat. We are used to very high
True.
winds and drifty thermals, and we were still learning at that time. And beer has got this nil wind conditions, and and it was springtime if I remember, And I arrived in Beer one day after you had come in, and we were sharing the room.
Right,
And our course was supposed to start the next day after I arrived. But on that day, you, for the first time, you flew in Beer, went straight to Dharamshala and landed in Dharamshala. And that's
right,
all by yourself. And
right.
I remember you not letting me sleep the whole night because you were playing that video on your phone all through the night. Oh my God. And at that time, the instructor asked, how much did you fly? And you said, yesterday I went to Dharamshala. And he was dumbfounded. He said, what do I teach you now? I mean, that was amazing. So that's how you learned. That's how you found the difference. What is it that is different about thermals in Kamshet versus beer? Could you just quickly tell us?
Yeah, so Kamshet, because of the wind factor and being a much lower altitude, your takeoff is at a much lower altitude. It's far more difficult, to find a thermal, to stay in a thermal. The terrain is different, so to be able to guess, where the next thermal will be.
Hmm.
Whereas, that particular day in beer, happened to be, I realized later that it happened to be a textbook day.
Okay.
So it was like perfect, almost nil wind conditions or, very mild tailwind as I was going towards Dharamshala. And of course, I was exploring, so I didn't know the route. I had not really studied the route or anything. And of course, I'd seen the maps a couple of times, so I had a kind of general direction in my head that, which way
Hmm.
is Dharamshala. And so when I got there and I, took off and, flew from, the first thermal towards the next ridge, and it just seemed to, it just seemed to come on really easy. I mean, I would just fly where I thought there would be a thermal, and sure enough, there was a thermal.
Okay.
So and yeah, and so on and so forth. I mean, just from one ridge to the next, and I was just, too busy enjoying the terrain to even.
I know
I
that.
wasn't even thinking of Dharamshala. I
Right.
was. In fact, I knew you were arriving, and that was the day I did my flight,
Hmm.
and I knew that you were expected to land.
Right.
So I actually, my plan that day was that I'll fly towards Dharamshala, and then at some point, when I'm getting low, I'll try and land close to the road, and maybe hook up with you and come back. So that was the plan.
Thank God you didn't land at the airport.
Yeah, no, no. So anyway, so it just and I just kept doing that till I realized that I thought, okay, this probably looks like Dharamshala.
Okay.
And the biggest problem was which stadium to land in, because I think one of them had a cricket match going on,
Going
and I
on,
was
yeah,
like,
I remember that.
I'll
Yeah.
probably get arrested for landing in there or something. So I think finally I found I didn't land in any of the stadiums, and I found a place next to a riverbed and landed
Yeah.
there.
Awesome. That was really nice.
Yeah,
Now, in terms of topography,
yeah,
Beer has a sunny side and a shadowy side because
right,
of the east and west orientation.
right, right,
And but in Beer, the lead side thermals also work,
right.
right? So that's something I want to know about. But I want to know from our
Hmm,
perspective, for
right,
me, because when we fly in Kamshet, which is our home ground, and we fly there the most,
right,
I go to Beer once or twice a year. You go to Beer many more times.
right,
But when we were learning earlier, like how our pilots, newer pilots would come
right,
and learn to fly here, we
right.
never go back
Correct.
because of the winds that we have over here.
Right.
But it is not the same in Beer. We can go to the lee side, and sometimes that also works. Could you just tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Absolutely. So yeah, the most important difference between the two is the wind factor.
Okay.
So, I mean, in beer, you get very negligent wind, sometimes just 4, 5 kilometers an hour.
Right.
Whereas, in Kamshet, a minimum we fly with is always about between 15 to 20 kilometers. And
Right.
that's what makes the difference, you know. I mean, so in beer also, you know, you will feel the turbulence when you're very close, you know, to the ridge line, and if you're approaching from the lee side, you will definitely feel some turbulence, but it's manageable. Whereas in Kamshed, it's just, you know, it's impossible. If you do that, you're in trouble.
Correct.
So so that I think is the main difference. And again, you know, when we talk about lee side, you know, it's also confused sometimes with the lee side of the sun. So so the most important thing is that, you know, your thermals are always going to get triggered on the sunny side.
Okay.
And if the sunny side happens to be in the wind, you know, in the wind shadow, or, you know, the wrong side, then in Kamshed, it's an absolute no-no. You know, you can't go there. Whereas in beer, yeah, definitely, I would not think about the wind also.
Okay. Let me just put this a little bit more into a little bit more explanation on what you just said.
Hmm.
Uh, so east to west in beer, the east side gets heated up first,
Right,
and the thermals rise from the east side of the ridge of the
right,
finger. But
correct.
if the wind is from the west in the morning,
No, so the thing with beer is that there is no real wind as such,
okay,
because it is so far from the ocean, and, you know, there is no wind direction except, you know, at the higher levels,
right,
which would be, you know, above whatever flight band we normally fly at.
okay,
So the wind is actually created by the sun.
right,
So in the morning, you know, all the east facing slopes are
heated,
kind of heated up, and then they start, you know, the air starts moving upwards,
right,
and as a result, you know, in the valleys, you know, the air kind of comes in to fill up that uh, kind of vacuum, right, which
right,
is
because
created.
the air is rising and that has to be
Correct,
filled up by colder air.
correct.
So that's coming
So
in,
yeah, so that itself is what causes the
wind flow.
morning east wind that we feel, you know, that
Okay,
wind flow. It's nothing but the thermals rising from that particular direction.
okay,
And then, surely enough, you know, as the sun comes overhead, you know, we start getting a little bit of wind flow from the south.
right.
And then later on, as it switches over to the west side, then, you know, the whole system switches, and you start getting a little flow from the west.
So that
So
is why,
there, yeah,
sorry, that is why it's easy to go to,
yeah,
or rather, it is uh, the direction to take is to go to Dharamshala, which
yeah.
is
It's
to the
much
east,
simpler
and
because, yeah, in the
when it
morning,
switches, you come
yeah,
back with the wind to the west.
correct.
Uh,
Except, you know, I mean, the days when you're chasing, you know, records and things like that. So where you might need to, you know, you reach the point where you want to turn around, and the
right,
day has still not switched.
right,
So then you actually end up flying, you know, upwind, you know, and that's the time when you need to actually get beyond the ridge and pick up thermals on the other side.
right. So, so the we spoke about the lee side here now because
Right.
in the morning the west would be lee, and in the evening the east would be lee in Bir. But the lee side that's there in Kamshet for us
Right.
is the lee of
Yeah.
the
So
thermal.
so now we are talking about the lee, as in the lee of the wind.
No, that's what I'm trying to explain
Yeah.
over here. There are two
Yeah.
kinds of lees. One is
Correct.
the lee side which is getting heated, sorry, which is not getting heated. That's the lee in Bir, and because there is
Yeah. So
no
to avoid
wind,
avoid confusion, let us talk about the sunny side and the non-sunny side.
correct. So
And for the wind, you know, the wind, we can say the side of the wind is, you know, the windy side, and the lee side,
correct. So
windward side, and the lee side.
correct. So in Bir, there is a sunny
Yeah.
side and then the shady side.
Correct.
That's how we differentiate and where we should find the thermals.
Right.
But in Kamshet, we also
Yeah.
need to take care of
Wind.
the windward,
Yes.
the lee of the
Correct.
thermal,
Correct.
behind the thermal. So if the wind is blowing from
Absolutely.
the east, we need to be
Right.
careful of the thermals
Yeah.
in the west because we eventually, invariably we enter that and we feel the
Yes,
turbulence. So
right,
for pilots who are flying in calm state, if you do feel turbulence, heavy
right,
turbulence, you
right.
probably are on the lee side of the thermal because of the wind speed. There is a
Yes,
lee side that's been created behind the thermal. So try and approach it with a wider turn
right,
so that you come to the
right.
front side of the thermal where there
From
is
the upwind.
less. Correct.
Yeah,
And the core will also be in front.
correct.
So you remember the theory of the egg yolk to describe the thermal?
Yeah, right. So, yeah, but that is again, something that kind of ends up confusing a lot of people. So, we always see this, diagram where, they show the thermal, looking like,
An egg.
a fried
Yeah,
egg.
fried
Yeah,
egg. Yeah.
yeah.
But
Sort of
that's
with
not the
the,
reality.
yeah, with the yolk,
Yeah.
towards the windward
Windward
side,
side.
and that would be the core of the
Right.
thermal.
Right.
Right? Simply because that is the fastest rising air, so the wind doesn't affect it too much.
Correct.
So it goes up straight like a column, and all the other air around it is sort of pushed by the wind. So
Right.
that is why you get the core on the upwind side.
Right.
Uh, but that kind of also confuses a lot of people because mentally they then start thinking of thermals as being completely round,
Round. Exactly.
kind of columns. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing to do is, if you look at the cloud, you look at a cloud and you look at the shape of the cloud.
That's the
I
shape
mean,
of the
then,
thermal.
yeah, and then, yeah, you simply mentally just, take a knife and, slice it through, you know, horizontally, just slice it through the cloud. And that is what would give you, the shape of your thermal.
That's brilliant, Viz. That's
Yeah,
just brilliant. That piece of knowledge right there. The shape of the cloud is probably the shape of the thermal. So don't
correct.
don't expect it to be like a perfect round fried egg.
Yeah,
And I remember you telling me this long back that
right,
I think you had read some book and you said no, it doesn't work this way. It is more amoeba shaped. There are different fingers to
right,
it and different sides to it, and you need
right. So
to explore that.
even if you see a cloud, I mean, even if a child draws a cloud, it's not just one, like a cotton ball.
Right,
It has various bumps, right?
right,
Each cloud is combined of, let us say, a cluster of cotton balls.
correct,
So each of those little formations or those little bumps is one thermal,
correct.
or one thermal core.
Core,
So when you look at a cloud, if you see four or five different formations, so it's probably four or five different cores that are
coming up and joining to form the cloud.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So and of course then between them you'll have areas of sync. So so yeah, to get a mental picture of a thermal, it's important to kind of keep your mind open to this concept and not expect it to be circular in shape.
Correct. So, just a pointer to the listeners, if you really want to understand what Viz and I are talking about over here, the shape of the thermal, you should see
Right.
Viz's tracks on Leonardo, and you will see that he does not usually core the thermal in the way we do. We find a telephone cord, but his thermaling will be more different shapes because he is, that's why we call him perceptive. When I introduced him earlier during the show, that's the skill of Viz, where you will see if you see his tracks. Okay, Viz, that was really nice. That information will help not only the
Yeah,
younger
so
pilots,
so
but
to add to what you just said, I
hmm,
mean, initially, yes, I mean, you can just kind of, get a thermal and crank into it
right,
and just do, very precise, corkscrew
right,
thermaling,
right,
as far as it takes you.
right.
But then over time, you also let the wing speak to you,
Hmm.
and you let the wing carry you to wherever is the strongest lift.
Okay,
So which is why then, your thermals may not be precisely, circular, and
circular, correct.
yeah, so you may have,
S-
odd shapes,
Right,
happening, and then you kind of follow the drift, because again, air is not going to rise straight up.
correct,
It is affected in different layers. It gets pushed around.
correct. It's like
So
a soup.
yeah,
Atmosphere is a soup, and a lot of things
yeah,
like a lava lamp. A lot of things will happen in
yeah,
between.
exactly. Yeah, that's a very good example. A lava lamp, the way you see that lava
Right.
kind of rising. So that's exactly what happens with a parcel of air.
So, Viz, now we clarified the thermaling part of it, how what a thermal looks like. Maybe it's not
Right,
circular, it's got different things, and you mentioned that the shape of the cloud could
right,
give you the shape of a thermal. Very interesting. And I always see that when you come to the takeoff and if there are clouds around, you're continuously trying to see which cloud
right,
is which is the source of the thermal for what particular cloud. You will take
right,
into the consideration the drift of that wind, the speed of the wind, and then
right,
calculate, okay, so this is the source of this cloud. And that's how you're able to be so
right,
successful because you do your homework before you fly. You're just not going in the air blindly and searching for
right.
thermals, but you're doing your you're putting a painting a picture before you get into the air. So that's amazing. Now, my question after this logical question is, knowing this is one thing, going
Right,
into the air, taking your glider
right,
into a thermal,
right,
and your glider going all over the place, and
right,
understanding which part of the thermal is your glider in. Are you in the
right,
core? Are you in the lee side? Are you in the front side? And you also said just now that
right.
you let the glider guide you. What
Correct.
is your technique? What should pilots look for? Because what's seen in the book, okay, crank into a turn, count to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, turn.
Right,
That's the initial part. Then we don't do that. We now let
right,
our wings do the talking and do the work by
right.
letting go of the wing to fly itself. So could you just explain how you fly?
So,
I'm talking about the glider control in thermal.
right. So yeah, I mean, I do have a preference. I prefer to thermal on the right side.
Okay.
Although I'm trying very hard to change that. So now I deliberately, thermal on my left. But
Okay.
every time there's a stressful situation, I end up switching back to
Back
the
to the
right.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the answer to what you said is that once you have, kind of done your basic thermaling and, you've got a hang of things, then it's very important to erase any kind of mental picture that you have of the thermal.
Okay.
I mean, initially you're taught that, create a mental picture
Right.
of the thermal and what the area is. But once you've gone beyond that stage, it's very important to erase that and then allow the thermal to create a picture to you, you know.
Correct.
So don't be, scared of, falling out of the thermal. You start with slightly wider turns and explore, if you feel that, there's a lift that is carrying you, then allow your glider to go that way and explore that lift, so every flight, every cross country flight that I do, I don't, immediately rush off and start going from thermal to thermal. So I tend to spend a lot of time in that first thermal, exploring, understanding the air, getting a fix of the wind direction at, different levels as you climb, because the wind tends to switch at, different
Different
inversion
levels. Correct.
levels. So once you've established this, once you've got this feeling, how some days the thermals are really, narrow and punchy. On some days, they are very wide, kind of floaty thermals, with no really defined cores. So this kind of sets the tone, so at least for the next hour or so, it kind of dictates what kind of thermals you will expect in your
Okay.
flight.
That's
So
it.
it's
That's
very important, yeah, it's very
yeah.
important to allow this kind of image to develop,
Exploration. Okay.
yeah, rather than have a mental image and let that fixate you to your flying style.
Okay. So you need to find if you can find the core, if
Yeah,
if there is a core, if there are
yeah,
two cores or If it's
Yeah.
just
So in the
flat,
beginning, don't have an agenda. Your only agenda should be get as high as possible.
okay.
And while you're doing that, just keep your mind free and get a feel of the thermal, because that is going to tell you what the next few thermals are going to be like.
How do you handle turbulence in a thermal while climbing? That's the most frequent worry and question that
Well,
comes up.
the only real turbulence that you feel is when you're passing from. I mean, when you're close to the edge of the thermal, right?
Okay,
Because that is where the shear happens of the air that is rising and the air that
that
is
is coming down.
falling around the thermal, right?
Correct.
So that is it's kind of a doorway or a gateway into the thermal.
Right.
And I guess that's the only part you really need to manage or get worried about. And once you're through that and you're into that core of rising air, after that, I it's quite for me it's quite meditative. Once you get into the thermal, sometimes I even like to close my eyes. And yeah, of course, if there are no pilots around.
Correct.
So yeah, I like to close my eyes and actually just feel the thermal,
So it's true that
uh,
you're mad.
absolutely.
No, no, I've
So
seen you
no,
do that. I've seen you do that.
try it
Yeah,
sometime.
yeah.
It's very meditative. And I think it's the best feeling in the world. The feeling of rising in the air using nothing but
But
the
yeah,
energy
yeah,
energy of the earth. It's
yeah.
just amazing. I mean,
Crazy.
it's
Yeah.
so uplifting for me. It's like praying.
What a
So
beautiful sport we are in, that we use nothing but the air, natural resources to fly
absolutely,
and go from places to places in our aircraft.
yeah, the bicycle
S-
of the skies.
It's a bicycle of the sky. Correct. So you should not be worried about the turbulence. It's the entry into the thermal. Once
Yeah,
you're in the thermal, try to stay within the thermal, explore
yeah.
around. Don't be in a hurry. Look around, fly around, establish what kind of day it is, what kind of thermal it is, and then fly and see if you can move around.
Yeah, one more thing I'd like to add. So if you hit a thermal and you're at a decent altitude, for example, in beer billing, for example, okay, Kamshed is a little bit different because you're slightly lower down,
Hmm.
so the thermals are a little narrower.
Hmm.
But whatever the thermal is, don't start turning immediately. Just fly into that lift.
Okay.
So
Explore it.
yeah, just fly into it, and that'll give you a sense of how big the thermal is, and you will be surprised.
Okay.
A lot. Yeah,
Okay, just to put this into more of a understanding bit, let's
yeah,
say I enter into a thermal. I get into the
yeah.
first, I get into, let's say I'm going from the lee side because I don't know, I just wandered into a thermal. I get a
Right,
little bit of a turbulence and my glider dives. As it
right,
dives, because of the falling air, the air that's coming down, I know
right,
that I am at the back of the thermal and I'm soon going to hit a little bit of updraft and I'll be entering into a rising air and my video is going to beep. Once that
right,
happens, I'm in
right,
the thermal. Okay. So
right.
now I keep going straight till I can.
Yeah.
My
So
video
so a
goes
lot of people, what they do is the minute they are in the rising air, they immediately start turning.
turning. Yeah. So
You know.
yeah,
So as a result, what happens is that you've just entered the thermal. You've initiated a turn, and next thing you know, you've again
you're
fallen
back
out
into
of the
the
thermal.
yeah, back into the
Yeah, so
lead.
you're keeping on doing this,
Yeah.
and you're obviously meeting a lot of turbulence.
Okay.
And then you're like, what's happening? You don't know why this is happening.
Okay.
So the
So
best, yeah,
so I enter the thermal. Now
yeah,
my video go beeps t t t t t t t t
right,
t t t t t t t t t t t t
right,
t t.
right.
When it goes t t t t, that's the time to turn. What would you do? Would you turn right 45 degrees and explore that side, or would you come back?
Yeah, so now once you fly into a thermal, you need to, apart from the vario, you need to feel your wingtips.
Right.
Okay. So one of your wingtips is going to be, rising higher than the other.
Right. So
So
that's that's the direction.
yeah. So you know that that's where your lifting air is, more powerful. So you do a minor correction, till again you kind of balanced it and both tips are rising together. And that, if you allow that to happen, you allow your glider to tell you what's going on in the thermal, then you will find that very soon you're turning in circles. So
Right.
so that itself could be one thing. I mean,
Ah,
there is
that's
a
it.
chance, yeah, there's a chance that you may fly bang into the center of the thermal.
Right.
So then, you're just lifting and both sides are lifting equally.
Right.
And then there is a very good chance that as you fly, your vario, the beep increases, and you feel yourself lifting faster and faster, because you are flying into now the core,
Right.
which is also going to be very close to the upwind
Side of the
edge of the
thermal.
thermal.
Correct.
So once you reach here, once you feel that, oh, now it's really beeping fast, and I'm at whatever 3 meters a second or 4 meters a second, that's the time you have to be very alert, because you will reach the front edge of the thermal before your vario tells you.
Correct.
So now you need to move into the feel mode and not listen to what the radio
Video.
is saying. So as soon as you feel that you're slowing down, your lift is slowing down, which your senses will tell you,
Right.
you immediately initiate your turn.
Done.
Don't
Okay.
wait for your vario to slow down.
Don't wait for the video because video will, there
Yeah,
is a lag of
yeah,
about almost a second in what the video is telling and
correct,
what actually is happening. Right.
correct.
Right. That's brilliant. Got it.
So,
So
and it's completely okay, to just fly through it, actually fall out,
come back in.
turn around, fly back inside,
Yeah.
just get an idea of, oh, okay, this thermal is almost a kilometer wide, for
S-
example.
So
You
so
know?
the mental picture that's being built is
Yeah,
as you go. So you're just joining the dots. You know one
correct.
side of the dots. Let's do that side of the
Yes,
dots. And tell me something,
correct.
when you're joining the dots, when you say that, okay, I'm now in the core, do you look
Right.
down on the topography or the terrain and say that, okay, this is what I see, this is the terrain, or do you go with the ball mark in the video? Do you follow that?
No,
The
so
last thermal
so
source.
yeah, so that is one way to do it. The last thermal, of course, that is if you have no bearing,
Right,
if you've kind of fallen out or whatever, then it's very useful, to come back to the thermal. But otherwise, once you are at a decent height, it's and closer to the cloud base, it's always better to follow the clouds.
right,
If you're
right,
close to the terrain, then look at markers in the terrain
right.
to find your next thermal. If you're closer to the clouds, then just follow the clouds.
Yeah. You have this bad habit of going into a cloud. You almost scared the shit out of me last time in Beer. We were flying and the clouds came in and we both were together and you just bloody disappeared. And I
Yeah.
and I had to turn around and lost a lot of height to look for you and you calmly said, yeah, yeah, I'm inside the cloud. I'm just coming out now.
Hmm. So
And
yeah,
also,
I would not advise that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're not advised, but you're pretty experienced in doing that. But you're not in the center, you're in the edges that I couldn't see you.
Yeah. So this again is, it was the October, autumn clouds, which
Right,
which are not very tall.
right.
So they
Easy,
normally
small.
fall in a strata, and you can
Yeah,
actually thermal through it.
through it, right. But
So they're quite benign,
yeah,
and I would not, fly into a,
yeah, yeah,
powerful,
powerful cloud. Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's obviously a no-no.
yeah,
Nobody should do
yeah,
that. I have the video of this, so it's not really a big cloud, but just that fact that
yeah,
I lost sight of you, and that
right,
really was worrisome at times.
right,
But there are also days, Viz, when we flew in Kamshat 2 weeks ago, a week
right,
ago, where
right,
we four of us went to the takeoff, and I said, okay, today we're
right,
going to connect to this cloud, to that cloud. So it
yes,
was you, me, Vishal, and Rohit.
yeah,
And we were the only ones at the takeoff, and we saw these little clouds all over the place. I said, okay, we
right,
did our assessment. Okay, the wind is blowing this direction. No, no, it's blowing from that
right,
direction. We should do this, we should do that.
yeah,
And ultimately, except for Vishal, who got good height,
right, right,
and me a little bit, the rest we
right,
just, in transition, we lost and
yeah,
we landed pretty
right,
fast.
right.
So there are days even like these where the clouds look like they are there and looks like
No,
thermals
no,
are
the
working,
clouds
but
were very much there, and what I figured out later about that day is we were in a convergence zone.
right,
So So if you realize, actually on one side of the valley the wind was coming from, the south,
South
and
and one
and the
from the
other side
west,
there was a wind, coming in from the northeast.
northeast, right?
So, and we were bang in the middle of that
Hmm.
convergence. I guess we were just too low to kind of connect to it.
Connect to that, yeah.
And I mean, Vishal did. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
we were a little bit late, I think, at the takeoff,
Yeah,
and he did manage to connect to it very well.
right.
And yeah, that was a brilliant day. You can, once you're in a convergence, you can just
Yeah,
fly,
yeah.
downwind along
Also,
that belt
yeah, also there was a lot of wind direction change as we went up, also a lot of
because
shear
because of the convergence.
because of the
Yeah, because
conversion. So it was not
yeah,
really very, very, uh,
yeah, it wasn't your typical
yeah, it
kind of
was not typical.
day or thermal. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Viz, I think we've done more than 40 minutes now. It's more than our
Oh
normal,
my God.
yeah. So, but it has been brilliant. We've got some really good points from you. I hope people listen to this and appreciate it. So, is there anything else that you want to add before we end this? We'll actually do a follow-up episode on this. There's lots to talk about this.
Yeah, so thermaling, be perceptive, keep your eyes open. There are lots of little clues that help you. Rising pieces of paper, little insects which are
Hmm.
way higher than where they're supposed to be.
Leaves.
You will always see these little markers, and once you start looking at it, you can actually see the thermal,
Right.
you
I
know.
once had a a smiley emoji balloon, a proper balloon,
Yeah, yeah.
a yellow color one.
Yeah, balloons, butterflies, I
Yeah,
mean, you get twigs,
twigs. Yeah,
little pieces of hay and all sorts of things.
right.
So
That show you the direction of the wind,
that shows you the direction and that there's
the
a thermal
strength.
close
Yes,
by,
yes,
because they've obviously come up in a thermal, and then maybe they've just fallen out, or sometimes they're still rising.
right.
So that's and these little there are these little birds. They're
Yeah,
slightly
yeah,
smaller
yeah, yeah,
than,
smaller. They are
I
the
think they're called swallows.
they are the ones who
And
get the insects that have been brought up by the thermals.
exactly. So they've been,
Yeah,
lifesavers many
yeah,
times
for
when
me
I've
too.
been low, when I've
Yeah,
been low. So yeah, keep your eyes open. Thermaling is, all of these things. There is no, textbook answer.
perfect. And if there's any more questions, you can get in touch with me or with Viz. Hey, we are always
Anytime.
available anytime. Just get in touch with us, sit down. We'll be more than happy to explain. Viz is always there for everyone. The community knows he's very well known on that. So, Viz, really thank you a lot for coming on Paragliding Banter and sharing your
Thank you,
experience.
Sajid.
We should do a little bit more detailed episode on this next time. And I'll
Absolutely.
invite you again and we'll talk about it again. Yep.
Great. Yeah. Keep up the
Okay.
good work. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
Thank you,
All
everyone, for
right.
listening,
See you.
and we'll see you in another episode later. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.